Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics, reaching you live from our global headquarters here in the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Uzongo. Here's what's coming up on the program right now. Soldiers killed in the Okwama community during the peace mission to be buried at 3 p.m. today. President Bola Tinubu expected to attend funeral ceremony at the National Cemetery. And festering conflict between Nigeria Labour Congress and the Labour Party over the leadership crisis in that party hasn't held back the ability of the party to hold its national convention as it continues to prepare for that event later today. And President Bola Tinubu declares kidnappers as terrorists, says they must be treated as such for their cowardly acts and conduct. We're tracking political activities from Anambra to Abuja, but let's tell you that in about 3 hours, at 3 p.m. today, the body of 17 soldiers who were killed in the Okwama community of Delta State during a peace mission will be laid to rest at the National Cemetery. The solemn ceremony will be attended by the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Bola Tinubu, who will serve as special guest of honor amongst other top military and state officials. The Defense Headquarters had reported that 17 personnel, including commanding officer of the 181 Amphibious Battalion, 2 majors, 1 captain, and 12 soldiers of the battalion were killed on March the 14th, 2024 in Okwama community in Ogeli South local government area of Delta State. The slain military personnel responded to a distress call after a communal crisis between Okwama and Okoloba communities, both in Delta State, before they were murdered. In the meantime, there is a request for further analysis and investigations into the killings of the soldiers to avert a possible repeat. That request is coming from the immediate past Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Rabo, who condemns the killing and says the military needs to reconsider its role in resolving civil disputes in order to focus on its constitutional mandate. He gave this view while addressing participants at the 3-day Joint Task Force Commanders Conference organized by the Chief of Defense Staff.
This is the second Joint Task Force Conference organized by the Chief of Defense Staff to review the performance of security agencies involved in the various theaters of operation. Participants at this conference are drawn from the Armed Forces, the Nigeria Police Force, the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, and the Office of the National Security Advisor. The focus is the security situation in the country.
This conference provides an avenue for a comprehensive evaluation of the implementation of the decisions reached during the maiden conference and other emerging issues with a view to addressing the threats to our national security. Importantly, I would like to recognize the uncommon sacrifice of the officers and men who were killed in Okwama in Delta State and all others who have paid the supreme price.
The murder of 17 soldiers in Okwama in Delta State is brought to the fore. Former Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Rabo, urges the security agencies to re-strategize.
The perpetrators of this heinous crime must be made to face the full wrath of the law. To forestall future occurrence, therefore, there must be further conversations on the limits to aid to civil authority, as we encourage non-kinetic operations and community engagements. I believe that it is necessary for the armed forces to curtail the apparent descent to see-finish syndrome. That's my coinage.
Participants at the conference share their thoughts on the nation's security challenge.
While the armed forces of Nigeria continue to record milestones of success in theaters of operations across the country, this has not been without some major setbacks. Notable is the recent ugly and gruesome incident Delta State that led to the loss of lives of our gallant officers and soldiers. This loss is a great mishap for the entire nation, and the perpetrators must surely be brought to book.
My capacity as Minister of State for Defense, I can attest to the dedication and unrelenting effort of our armed forces, spearheaded by the Chief of Defense Staff in securing our dear nations from internal and external enemies. of the democracy.
A three-day conference with the theme Consolidating Operational Successes Across All Theatres of Operations is aimed at reviewing the performance of officers and men of the Joint Task Force.
So with the issues of security, elder statesman Chief Edwin Clark has condemned the killing of the 17 soldiers in Okwama community in Delta State. He describes it as a barbaric act. At the news briefing in Abuja, Chief Clark also condemns the invasion of his country home in Ikegbodo and that of his father in Ughelli by the military over allegations of harboring one of the suspects involved in the heinous act in Okwama. The elder statesman who decried the destruction of his country home, however, said that he has forgiven the military after receiving an apology from one of their commanders.
Very upset that army officers, 17 of them, 4 of them are officers, should be brutally killed in a country like our own, not at the war front, not counteracting any dangerous group, killed in cold blood. I said, no. We must look for these bastard people, these people who are barbaric, wicked, unpatriotic, evil. So I was therefore surprised when I got a call from the general, is it Absalam or something like that, asking me, apologizing to me. So I thought somebody died. No, he said we don't our tracked record, tracked your room, and that someone was there. I said, but how can that happen? Anyway, I have no house in Ughelli. 2, my father had a compound in Ughelli. It was later I discovered that it was not properly briefed. It was my house, my living house in Ikegbodo, with all security doors and everything. They don't even ask for the keys.
Moving on now, treat kidnappers as terrorists. That's the declaration from President Bola Tinubu, who has condemned the acts perpetrated by kidnappers across the country, considering their act as a despicable crime. President Tinubu said this at the Ramadan dinner with serving and retired judicial officers led by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwola, reiterating the government's resolve to defeat banditry. The president said those who resort to kidnapping children are cowards, incapable of confronting the might of the Nigerian armed forces. On the review of salaries of the judicial officers, the president pledged that his administration will continue to implement necessary reforms to improve the welfare and working conditions of judicial officers.
We are working hard. Yes, the bandits, just please uphold our resolve when we say kidnappers are terrorists and don't rule against us. That's the way we will perceive them. That is the way we must treat them. And that is a fact that we are facing currently, unless we take very strong action against these people. They become cowardly, they have been degraded, they look for soft targets, they go to backyard of local schools and kidnap children and create disaffection. We must treat them equally as terrorists in order to really get rid of them. And I promise you, we're going to get rid of them.
President of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, reiterating government's resolve to get rid of people that commit some of these heinous crimes. Let's move on to other stories now. The National Working Committee of the People's Democratic Party on Tuesday met with the chairman of the party's across the state in Abuja. The meeting, presided over by the acting national chairman of the party, Mr. Umar Damagum, had some members of the National Working Committee in attendance. The meeting, held behind closed doors, which enabled the National Working Committee interact with these officers of the party at the state and review the tenure of its officers in 26 states of the Federation. Also discussed at the meeting is the states of the party as well as preparations to tackle the challenges ahead. And we're being joined now on the program by the Publicity Secretary of PDP in Ondo State, Mr. Kennedy Perete. He joins us via Zoom. Mr. Perete, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me this afternoon.
Well, the conversation, I'm sure it's a myriad of conversation, but I know that the Ondo election, as well as the Edo election, should be one of the paramount conversation, besides the looking at and reviewing what the tenure of the leadership across the states are. But bring us up to speed into details, perhaps, of that closed-door conversation with the acting national chairman of the PDP.
Well, it was actually a closed-door session for members of the National Working Committee and the state chairman party. The part of it which they wanted the public to know has been made public by the National Organizing Secretary. And that is the fact that in states where members of the party engaged in anti-party activities in the 2023 general elections, presidential elections, a list should be compiled forwarded to Abuja. Necessary action.
Let's focus a bit more, since we have the opportunity to talk to you, in terms of your preparations. Was there conversations about the preparation, before we go back to these general issues, were there conversations about the preparations for the Ondo governorship elections and what was said?
A timetable has been made public by the National Working Committee, which included sales of nomination forms for governorship and expression of interest, which began on the 7th of March and ended on the 21st March. Now, the second stage is the nomination or election of 3 ad hoc delegates, which is going to form the electoral college for the primaries. Now, as I speak to you this afternoon, the Sambebu committee or panel that has to do with the screening of the aspirants in session, by the end of today, we would have come out with a list of aspirants that were cleared for the primaries. Thereafter, there will be an appeal panel, which will sit on the decision of the screening committee as to whether there are complaints or not. Thereafter comes the election of the 3 ad hoc delegates, be on the 8th of April this year. As it means in every ward, 3 ad hoc delegates will be elected by members of the ward to represent them in the electoral college. 5 of who becomes the flag bearer of the party, on the 5th of April this year.
We remember not too long ago, there were issues about, God rest his soul, Fatah Adams had passed, but there were issues about his leadership. And of course, there were insinuations as to whether or not there were external influences in Ondo PDP, and that caused a bit of division. But going forward, how much of assurances is coming both from the national as well as from you people who are in the state level to everybody who is an aspirant? We have about almost 10 of them. In terms of how transparent you've assured them that this process is going to be, because if you put it, juxtapose it with what happened in Edo State, is why I am talking about this particular one. The Edo issue is still a bit of a crisis right now.
Well, Ondo State is a very peculiar state. Peculiar in the sense that we're dealing with people who know their onions, and we have never had a process of primaries that any issues arose thereafter. We have always had rancor-free, pitch-free primaries. And, what initially looked like something like disagreement between the state and the national secretariat was the issue of whether or not the state secretariat could zone that is leaders of the party in Ondo State whether or not if you zone the governorship to any particular zone, whether to Central Central District or to Southern Central District. But as it turned out, all those who has expressed interest are from the particular Central District, that is the Southern Central District. So whether we make a pronouncement to respect or not is not clear, but all those aspiring are from the Southern Central District. And something very interesting happened. The former governorship candidate of our party in 2016 and in 2020 decided on his own to pull out the governorship race, which was a lot of mileage for the PDP in Ondo State because he has the supporters across board, some of whom thought or assumed he should throw his hat to the ring. But after due consultations and all considerations, he said he was uncontested, which was a major plank for reconciliation across board in the state. So his pulling out of the race has actually given a lot of impetus to the reconciliatory efforts.
Would you consider it a tall order for the People's Democratic Party in Ondo State, given that the first test as to how prepared you are for the governorship election was the by-elections and rerun elections that took place, which happened in Ondo State also, but the PDP lost in that particular exercise. So do you think that how much can the PDP pull off to be able to say they will want to take over the state eventually in November?
Now, there are two issues to be put in perspective here. Number one is the mood of the state. Number two is what were the statistics of the constituency in question, that is Akoko North West, Akoko North Federal Constituency. What are the results of the election in February 2023? What became the results in the recent election that was held last week? Now, in 2023, in that federal constituency, the PDP got 9,000 votes to the APC's 51,000 votes. 9,000 to 51,000 in February 2023. Now, in February 2024, the PDP got 15,000 to APC's 35,000. So when
connection issues. Mr. Perite, can you hear me? Oh dear. Okay, we're already trying to wrap up that conversation. We apologize for that. We're already trying to wrap up the conversation. But that's Mr. Kennedy Perite, the publicity secretary, state publicity secretary of the People's Democratic Party in Ondo State. We'll now take this short break. When we come back, we'll switch gears to the issues around the Labour Party National Convention holding Nnewi in Anambra State. Join us again. Welcome back. Despite controversy over the leadership of the national chairman of the Labour Party, Mr. Julius Abure, the party is going ahead with its national convention to hold now in Nnewi in Anambra State. The elective convention is a first after the 2023 general election amidst myriads of challenges, allegations against the chairman of the party, Julius Abure, over financial infractions and call for his resignation. We understand that the presidential candidate of the party, Mr. Peter Obi, the party's only governor, that's from Abia State, Dr. Alex Oti and others, had prevailed on the Abure leadership to shift the contentious convention for wider consultation, but it appears it was ignored. Lately, the Nigeria Labour Congress pickets the national and state secretariat of the party demanding for a shift in the convention and resignation of Mr. Abure, but it appears that has not been able to stop the event from going on. We are following the development as the convention holds in Nnewi in Anambra State to understand that accreditation of delegates is ongoing at the moment. As soon as we're able to establish connection with them, we'll bring you up to speed with what's going on. But we're being joined in the program by a public affairs analyst, the former vice presidential spokesperson, and the host of the Inside Sources right here on Channels Television, Mr. Laolo Akonde. Mr. Akonde, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Good afternoon, Jeff.
Yes, I know you are not a member of the party, you're a journalist now, and but you've been commenting on a lot of these issues, and what is playing out in the Labour Party at the moment. Maybe you help us make sense of that situation.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I think the leadership of Labour Party as it is presently constituted doesn't seem to understand the role that the Labour Party has come to play in the development of the democratic space in Nigeria. The Labour Party showed during the last election that it is still very possible for people to be mobilized. People that are otherwise not impressed by the two dominant party. Labour Party has shown in the last election that those people can still be brought into the space, into the conversation. It's a major dynamic. Now, if Mr. Buhari and his friends, understand this, they will put the interest of the Nigerian people, of that potential, of that interesting dynamic in Nigerian politics ahead of whatever may be their own games. It is quite a big disappointment that the Labour Party is showing itself to be as disorganized, as uninspiring as the other major parties that it showed the whole world that they can give a run for their money. So this is just a very heartbreaking thing that is going on in the Labour Party. And I hope that the voices of Mr. Peter Obi and Governor Oti will prevail, and the voices of the Labour leadership will prevail. Mr. Buhari has done a very poor job in articulating whatever may be the reasons for his current behavior. Now, I'm not saying whether he has the good reasons or not, but he has done a poor job. He has not made himself, he hasn't articulated very clearly what he's trying to do. And it will seem that he has just managed to get himself enmeshed in the usual politics of personal aggrandizement. And it's such a big disappointment, Jeff.
All right, Mr. Akonde, moving forward, what do you see playing out? Because apparently this is a divided house. The Labour Union, Nigeria Labour Congress, is constantly saying, we are owners of this party. There's an argument on that part. There is the Apapa group. There are all kinds of groups. So where does this leave a viable opposition for the nation's democracy if they hold this convention and maybe somebody is elected?
Yeah, which is the point that, many people saw the Labour Party as a potential alternative voice, opposition voice that can put things in proper context within our democratic space. So if they are unable to sort out this problem and sort it out in good time, Labour Party just goes through the trash. But I hope the voices of Mr. Peter Obi and Governor Oti and the Labour, the NLC and the Labour movement, I think their voices should be encouraged to prevail, because the argument that they have put forward are quite compelling. Buhari has not managed to give a sufficient response, so far to some of the issues that have been raised. They have been raised by the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Labour movement, the issues that have been raised even by Mr. Peter Obi, and the tendency of Mr. Oti. Buhari has not managed to come forward robustly. So what might happen is that if this is not properly managed, then, the excitement that we had about Labour Party just goes out the window quite disappointingly. But I suspect, Jeff, very clearly that it is possible that Mr. Oti and Mr. Obi, if they put their feet down, they are the ones that have the stronger leverage because of, what they have become. I mean, OT is a governor, and Mr. Obi has clearly become a significant political figure. So he does have considerable clout. If they work together with Labour, I think they can still save the Labour Party.
Mr. Lalo Akonde, former vice presidential spokesperson, journalist, as well as the host of Inside Sources right here on Channels Television. Thank you so much for bringing your insight on the program.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well, we're keeping tab on that national convention. Hopefully, when they are done tomorrow, we should be able to bring an official of the Labour Party, hopefully, to the show so that we find out exactly how things played out. But let's move on now to more stories where the River State chapter of the APC has hit back at the federal lawmaker Ikenga Ogochinre over his comment criticizing the action of the State Assembly. While briefing journalists in Port Harcourt, the state capital, the caretaker chairman of the party in the state, Tony Okocha, called Mr. Ogochinre not to get himself involved into the affairs of the state.
River State has 13 federal constituencies, and we're not aware that Ogochinre, who says he's a member of the House of Representatives, represents any of these 13 federal constituencies of River State. The last time we checked, it's clear to us and to Nigerians that the Ikenga himself, Ogochinre, represents the people of Idato, one of the constituencies there, Idato local government in the Imo State. And one wonders where and how he is able to establish a nexus, establish a locus, to be able to qualify him to speak about River State.
Loads of political happenings, and that's our responsibility to track it right here on Lunchtime Politics. Thank you so much for your time. And of course, your usual company will be back again tomorrow to bring you more political stories. I'm Jeffrey Uzanga. You've been served on Lunchtime.